Hey everybody, Dr. Jeff back here with another Health Tip Tuesday. So as I've mentioned in a couple previous posts, this is Diabetes Awareness Month, and I thought what better conversation than to talk a little bit about foods that will lower blood sugar, as well as maybe some supplements that will address blood sugar. So first and foremost, we'd always talk about diet and its impact on our sugar, and certainly lifestyle is the number one risk factor. Poor lifestyle is the number one risk factor for type 2 diabetes. So as most of you already know, if your blood sugar is too high, what's the most common thing to do but to reduce the sugar in your diet? What kind of sugars are we talking about? Primarily, we're talking about processed sugars and processed flours and carbohydrates first. Now, when we talk about sugars, oftentimes patients will ask me, well, what about natural sugars? Unfortunately to your body doesn't know the difference between, let's say, a glass of apple juice and high fructose corn syrup that is in that processed box of food on your counter. Sugar is essentially sugar to the body, and sugar is broken up into two components, glucose and fructose. That is what constitutes basically table sugar. And so we want to make sure that we reduce that. The other thing that we want to make sure is we reduce processed flours and grains. And the reason for that is because while processed flours and grains don't have fructose as a component of them, they're essentially molecules of glucose or starch, but they're so processed that oftentimes they increase the absorption through the elimination of things like fiber in those foods. It increases the absorption of those sugars through the gut and thus increasing blood sugar. So oftentimes we'll see that people will spike after they eat a refined carbohydrate like pasta or bread or crackers, especially if there's no fiber in those foods. The other thing I have people watch for certainly are things like sodas with sugar and even fruit juices. So even though something looks as though it'd be organic and really healthy for you, sometimes those fruit juices that look like they'd be great actually do nothing more than raise blood sugar. I've talked incessantly about fiber in this conversation, and I'll bring that back around again. So the primary food source that will lower sugar levels and decrease absorption of sugar in the body is fiber. That's dietary fiber and supplemental fiber. A spice that one might think about with blood sugar is cinnamon. So sprinkling cinnamon on things like your oatmeal or your whole rolled steel cut oats, or putting sugar on another cinnamon on another healthy food might prove to be helpful for lowering sugar levels. When we talk about supplements, a couple nutrients that come to mind. First one is chromium. Chromium picolinate at a dose of 200 micrograms, usually once or twice a day, has been proven in some small studies to reduce sugar amounts or blood sugar amounts. And then two herbs for you to think about today. One is fenugreek, and then the other is berberine. So fenugreek is an herb that can lower blood sugar, and berberine is a constituent of certain plants that can also lower blood sugar, and it has a similar action to some of the medicines that are on the market that help lower blood sugar. So we think about this as a big treatment plan of lowering sweets and refined carbohydrates. Number 2, increasing dietary fiber or supplemental fiber. 3, using spices such as cinnamon. 4, using a micronutrient such as chromium picolinate. And lastly, consider herbal therapy, things like fenugreek and berberine, maybe to round off that treatment plan. Oftentimes with these medicines or this approach, you have to combine a couple things together, and obviously we still want to start with a foundation of food. So if you have further questions, please comment below. Otherwise, be safe, be well. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks.